that can be asked, and those things which includes mostly the growth model, the kind how ecosystem produces things. So that is in chapter 14, the productivity, how to calculate the productivity, decomposition, energy flow, etc. So Kulsum has joined. Hello Kulsum, how are you? All good? Yeah, Kulsum, good. Do you have any doubts to begin with, Kulsum, before I start? Anything you want to ask? No. Okay. So I was just telling Matthew that we have finished with chapter 12, the last class. So in the last class we talked about, so because let me give you a quick uh, summary what we talked about before we finished, before we start the next unit. So we talked about molecular diagnosis, okay, Matthew and Coulson. So uh, you have to read from NCERT this part, and if you have any doubt you can come to me, okay. So only thing that you need to read in a little bit of detail is molecular diagnosis, and in that PCR and ELISA. So PCR we have already discussed when we were studying the recombinant DNA technology, right? It comes up again as a topic in molecular diagnosis because PCR can also be used as a diagnosis technique. So through PCR we can diagnose something, onset of any disease or infection. Like we all know that this term PCR was, you must have heard it during throughout the COVID, right? The RT-PCR reports were mandatory at one point, even to travel. So RT-PCR is nothing but what we do here is, if we suspect that there is a pathogen that has infected our body, so how to be sure? So we know that if a pathogen is there in our body, the pathogen's genome will also be there with the pathogen, may it be bacteria or virus, right? So for viral diseases, if you take nasal swab like we were doing in the case of COVID, and then in that nasal swab you can also culture it to make the number grow, or you can simply take it and target any gene of the pathogen and just amplify it by PCR. So you can make billions of copies of the pathogen's gene, and if that copies comes up and you can detect it, which means the pathogen was there. And also how many cycles it takes to reach a detectable threshold will tell you how much or how low is the concentration of the pathogen in your body. So sometimes uh, we can trace or we can detect pathogens at very low concentrations that do not that have not yet started a symptom, or the body is not showing any symptom. You will not know that you are infected, but the pathogens will be there. So that's why they are called early diagnosis techniques, and they are better than the traditional or conventional techniques of simple blood test, urine test, stool test, etc. And the second thing was ELISA. It's enzyme linked immunosorbent assay. And as you can understand, enzyme linked immunosorbent. So immuno means antibodies are there. So I just told that what we do is we prepare a tube or a plate like in which you want to test the sample, which already contains preformed antibodies. So this antibody can be against any protein or toxin that the pathogen produces. Okay. And if in your sample these blue things, let's say this is a target protein, okay, this blue one, if in your sample this target protein is there, it will bind to the antibodies, and then you design an enzyme labeled antibody for those target proteins. So one antibody is fixed to the substrate, the other you add, and that one will contain these small yeah, so they contain these small molecules which can cause reactions, which you can see here. So they can cause reaction with the substrate, and that enzymatic reaction will give rise to a different color. So if there is a color change in the sample, you know that your reaction has taken place, and it is because the toxin or the target protein was present to which your enzyme labeled antibody bound and showed an enzymatic reaction. So that's called enzyme linked immunosorbent assay. Here also you can detect these proteins in the body, and it's also used as a early diagnostic tool. Okay, is that clear, Matthew, Kulsum, and Abia?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Towards the end, we talked about transgenic animals and what purpose do transgenic animals serve, and why do we create them. So as we know that what are transgenic animals, so these are the animals or organisms whose genome or DNA has been modified or manipulated to contain a foreign gene. Okay, any foreign gene which is put in some other organism's genome, then it's called transgenic. Okay, trans and cis you must have read in context of molecules, right, and their shapes, stoichiometry in chemistry. So these are called transgenic animals, and there are the examples were we have created higher mammals also now: mice, rat, sheep, rabbits, goat, cows, pigs. They all have been created as transgenics. And why do we create them? So there were many reasons, and these are also listed in NCERT. A little bit of detail is also given, so please go and read that, and also get my lecture if you missed it, and watch it. So major 5 reasons why we create transgenic animals is to get biological products from them. For example, some proteins which are important for human proteins which we cannot synthesize in very lower organisms, so we use transgenic animals to do that. For example, transgenic cows have been uh, made to be enriched with human protein in their milk. So when human babies consume that protein, they get more developmental benefits. Vaccine safety and vaccine testing is done in transgenic animals, and also chemical safety or chemical testing is done in transgenic animals. So any chemical in nature you want to figure out if it is toxic to human, and if it is toxic, in what concentration it is toxic, what is the mechanism of its toxicity, etc. All that is studied in transgenic animals. Okay, you can make a transgenic animal more or less sensitive to a chemical and see how the mechanism is perturbed or how it is now working. Okay, not just this, not just product oriented, transgenic animals are also created for studying normal physiology and development. Okay, so it's also for sheer curiosity and adding to the knowledge, adding to, so all our knowledge that we have about human organs and how they behave, human molecules, they are not done in human. All our knowledge about developmental biology, you know, it does not entirely comes from human embryos. So we cannot take human embryos out or study them or dissect them and know see things. We cannot do chemical molecular testing on them. You know? So due to ethical reasons, there are, I don't know if some labs might have this license in the world to work on it, but normally it's not done in science. So all our developmental biology knowledge of embryos comes from related organisms. If we are studying something which is mammal, which is present in all mammals, we can use mice embryo, we can use uh, rat's embryo. And if we want to study development in Kulsum has a question. Yes, I'll come to the question, Kulsum, in a while. Let me just finish these statements. So yes, so for normal physiology, for understanding how the normal physiology works, and also to understand developmental paradigm, we use transgenic animals. We also use transgenic animals to study disease conditions, which is abnormal physiology or abnormal development. Okay, so these are the 5 features. And now coming to Kulsum's question, Kulsum is asking, are there risks of transgenic animals? Yes, there are risks associated for ecology, for the life, for not majorly for us, But sometimes when we create transgenic animals, then we cannot leave those transgenic animals in the wild. Okay, we cannot release them. So transgenic animals contains modified, mutated, or foreign genes that we want to study in controlled environment. So we have to keep them in lab. They have to be lab bred and lab raised. And if we don't need them, you have to cull them in the lab only. Okay, that's what the ethics goes like. You cannot let them contaminate the normal ecosystem. Okay, and risks means this is the only risk. Like you just cannot. They can very easily, if you are making a transgenic bacteria or a transgenic virus or a transgenic, let's say, fly or mouse, and then when humans come in contact or somehow they bite you or something like that, that can carry some risk. But all these experiments are done in very, very controlled environment. So the risk factor is there to not let them loose, not lose them in nature. Is that clear, Kulsum? Yeah. Okay, great. So this is about chapter 12, and let me now add one more page to this notebook, and let's start with chapter 13. So in chapter 13, which, if I'm not wrong, please correct me if I'm wrong, it's organisms and population, right? Correct? That's the chapter. There, people? Yes, okay. And if I'm also correct, so the organism part is deleted from CBSE syllabus. So is it true for anyone who's not from CBSE and from any other board where organism part is still included? Please inform me. So I'm just telling you that it's been excluded from the CBSE or board's syllabus. You just have to worry about populations part. But the thing is that to understand the population dynamics, you also have to know the organisms dynamics a bit. You cannot just exclusively study population without knowing about organisms. Okay, so these exclusions are sometimes to ease the syllabus, but they have a consequence on your understanding. Okay. So what we will do is we will discuss a little bit about organism as well. Okay, will that work for everyone? Anyone? Because that will help you understand the population dynamics completely. Is that okay? Abhiya, Kulsum, and Matthew? Yeah. Okay, great.
Yes, no problem.
Yeah. So talking about organism, so how will you define organism and define population? What is the difference between organism and population? How will you define an organism? What is an organism? Okay, let's talk about population first, because I know that defining population is easy. Then we'll come to organism. So let's define population. How will you define a population? Anyone? Any population, not just animal or plants, human population. How do you define population in general? The question.
A group of organisms that same the same surface area and compete for the same resources.
Yes, right. So I think very good. That's exactly the definition. And you use the term surface area, so that can be said that I can say that a group of organisms that live in the same habitat, right?
Yeah.
Mostly mostly populations stick together. And population is not population is a term which does not have any fixed boundaries. So for that matter, if I say that what is the population of humans, what is the total population of human below the age of 30, So I will only consider those among humans also who are below the age of 30, and that will become my population that I am worried about. You can say, what is the population of tigers in India? Then you are only concerned about the population in India. Or you can say that what is the population of tiger in this particular forest. So you will exclude all other tigers. You will just take the population of that forest. Okay. But what stays common is that mostly population is a group of organisms that live in similar habitats, and as Matthew correctly said, they also share or compete for the same or similar resources. Okay. And one last part which also defines population, is that they also potentially interbreed among themselves. So most of the time a species population is formed by one species. Okay. Organisms of one species tend to stick and live together because they also potentially interbreed. But this last part is not very fundamental to populations, because breeding or interbreeding is a term we use for sexually reproducing organisms, correct? Right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So even non asexually reproducing organisms also, or lower organisms like bacteria, also form population. We say that it's a population of bacteria growing on a culture plate. So something growing on an artificial environment, which is a culture plate in a lab, also forms a population, because for those bacteria, that culture plate is the habitat. That culture plate is their geographic location. Okay. And all these bacteria there are sharing the resource which is present on that culture plate, which is whatever nutrient medium you have put on that plate. Okay. So there's no concept of interbreeding, but still they are a population. Okay. So anything from from a population of bacteria on a culture plate to a population of foxes in a forest, everything can be defined as a population. So you can write down. Let's define it. Write down. Population is defined as a group of organisms living in same geographical region or habitat. Same geographical region sharing or competing for same, not same, similar, sharing or competing for similar resources. and
Good evening, sir.
potentially. Yes, good evening, Arpit. How are you?
Sir, I'm good, sir. How are you?
I'm good. So we have started chapter 13. We are currently discussing about population. Okay, we are defining population.
Sir, we have just started, right?
Yes, we have started. We discussed something about population. Matthew discussed, and we are just summarizing what Matthew told us. Okay. So for similar resources, and potentially also can interbreed. Okay. So that's why I use the word potentially. So that's a population. Now, how will you define an organism? Organism. So as you said, It's an individual entity, right? Which is capable of independent existence in ecosystem. Okay, you can say it is sub part of a population. Correct. Now, why do we study population dynamics? Okay, and sometimes we study organism. Okay. So there is a difference how factors. So we know that there are factors that affect organisms, right? In every habitat. Let's take any habitat for example. What are the factors that you think in any habitat will affect organisms? Whether it is a desert, forest, a water ecosystem, grassland, anything. What do you think will affect an organism? That's the first thing that we have to discuss. So this is exempted from boards, but it's important to put a context to population. So we'll quickly discuss over it. So what I'm saying is factors affecting organisms. And there can be biotic and abiotic factors, right? So there can be biotic factors that affect organisms, which are other organisms, right? So, and there can be abiotic factors. So we will focus majorly on abiotic factors because that is important for us. Because these factors also will, in some manner, affect population. So what abiotic factors do you think can affect population? Anyone? People, come on, what happened? No one is discussing today. So these factors are temperature, some obvious things, right? And water, yeah,
light,
availability of light, like daylight, which is like what is the length of day and what is the length of night. Yeah.
and the nature of like soil.
And soil. So temperature you can understand. There are organisms that live in different kind of habitats, and they have, all organisms have a range of tolerating abiotic factors. Okay. And for example, if I take a polar bear which lives in the Arctic region, it has a range. It is adapted to not just tolerate but live. So sometimes we feel that organisms are tolerating something. They're not. For them, that is their comfortable environment. If you take a polar bear out of Arctic and keep it in a temperate region, even worse, a tropical region, do you think the polar bear will be happy that finally I'm out of sub-zero temperature? No, right? The polar bear will not feel good and will not survive there. So temperatures shape organisms' physiology. Temperature shapes organisms' behavior. And temperature also shapes organisms' body size. And so you will see that most of the Arctic animals are big in size. You will very rarely, I should not say never, because biology again comes with a lot of exceptions, but the general trend is that those organisms which live in very cold environments, they are big in size. You know why? It has physics involved behind it.
Sir, because no.
Because no.
No, sir. I thought, but I guess it's wrong.
So what did you think? That's what I'm interested in. We should never be interested in just the right answers written in the book. What do you think could be the reason according to you that tells not everything is written in books and not everything written in books is correct? Knowledge keeps changing, right?
Yeah, it needs to
Not
adapt
just
over time as
not
well.
just very long ago we used to study. When I was in school, it was a very prevalent knowledge, and it used to come in the books, not just in books but also in exams. We used to believe that on our tongue we have different taste receptors on different parts. Remember, we also used to draw regions: towards the end bitter, towards the side salty, at the tip sweet.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, so that was a
yeah, yeah.
knowledge to us. Then we realize that's not how it works. There's just a different
No,
reason
even
why
I
we.
wondered like why, like if I put like something in the part where it's supposed to be bitter and taste
Yeah,
sweet, then why? Yeah,
you
that
will
makes
also
sense.
taste bitter with the tip of your tongue. It's not like to
Exactly.
taste something bitter you have to go back. But when these receptors were discovered, people thought that, oh, just because of their density, which was detected in some parts differently, they thought that, okay, so this is the region responsible for bitter mainly. But it was found wrong, because one receptor can also, you know, through mechanisms, there are molecular mechanisms that two different tastes can share. So sweet and bitter, or sweet or salty, if I'm not wrong, both have one thing in common, that they are tasted through hydrogen ion concentration. Like it's there in their sensing mechanism. Just like we have different specialized neurons, but they are basically neurons. So everywhere on your tongue, these receptors are present everywhere. So it's not like we have specific compartments on our tongue. So that over time we realize, okay, that's not a solid knowledge, and we have now evidences that say otherwise. So don't just rely on knowing things. Okay, it's good to know things, and that is where we all begin. Okay, we can't say that books are all, because that attitude that books are all waste, education is all waste, they all teach us outdated things, is wrong. Books are not waste. Books are very important because they tell you what 500 600 years of modern science has achieved. Modern science is, I'm going too far. I think modern science is just 200 300 years old, not more than that. Especially biology, physics is even older, because physics developed kind of the first, then came chemistry. Biology, we still don't know about our own bodies. We still don't know what all the genes in our body do. We know that we have around 28,000 genes, but most of these genes, what do they do, we don't know in our own body. Forget about other organisms. Okay, and about the genes that we know what they do, we are not sure if they do just this, or there are many other things they can do. That's why gene editing in humans is illegal and unethical. It has a ban on it, because someone might think that, okay, I figured out this gene is responsible for causing cancer, BRCA1, let's say. So someone will think, okay, if this gene causes cancer, let's remove this gene from the body, you will never get cancer. Or if this gene is responsible for obesity, remove this gene and you will never have obesity. But you don't know what other functions that gene is playing with um, uh, with some other genes, like in collaboration with other genes. So genes interact in our body. That is our new knowledge that's emerging. Also, people used to think that the complex the organism, more number of genes it will have. Okay, that knowledge got busted because we realized, oh, humans have 28,000 genes and a species of butterfly found has 33,000 genes. What? Butterflies have more genes than us. Are they more evolved than us then? No. Then we realize that, okay, it's not the number of genes that make complexity, it's the interaction between those genes that makes organism complex. So that's where we realized, okay, we cannot just assign one function to one gene. So this one gene, one function theory got busted. They were in books, they were in real knowledge books, they were proved by scientists. Now they are being disproved by scientists only. So that's the beauty of science. Scientists don't hesitate in disproving things. It's because we don't own the knowledge, we just add to it. Correct? And we don't have to be, defending that I discovered this, so rest of my life I will just defend this. So that's the difference between mythology and science. Our beliefs we defend, If someone tells us that this is how what you have to believe coming from your culture, we just go on extremes to defend it. No, this is true because this is written in books. A scientist will say, I found this seems to be true, but this can be, also proved wrong if something better comes up with a better functional theory and evidences. So everything till now is working for us. Our knowledge is working. That's the proof that we are correct. We know that this receptor is responsible for this disease because we have managed to make all the drugs that target that receptor and treat patients. So patients are being cured, which means we are right. What we may find later is that not just this receptor, there is one more receptor that is responsible. So a better medicine will be to target both these receptors together, not just one. So that is adding to the knowledge. Okay, you understand?
Yes, sir.
So what's the take home message is that do not hesitate in thinking and answering, even if you think it's wrong, because no one is right. Even Einstein was not right, and he's most revered scientist of all time, one of the most revered scientists of all time. Okay, so what were you thinking, Arpit?
So I was thinking like they are big in size, so they can store large amount of heat.
So you were thinking exactly the correct answer. Why did not you answer? This is the answer. A big organism can have more energy and also can have less surface area that is exposed in as compared to the body mass. So this circle versus this circle, what is the difference? Whatever volume it has, okay, so smaller organisms are not all circular, right? A smaller organism, let's say this is head, then these are two legs, then hands, and then leg, let's say. But a bigger has bigger mass, right? So if you just calculate this surface area, the total surface area, so with respect to what they are storing inside, the mass or the energy, so smaller organisms tend to lose heat faster, very fast, because they have less energy stored in their body, and their effective surface area through which they can lose that energy is more than a big organism. Do you understand that? Makes sense to you?
Yes, sir.
Big organisms can store a lot of energy and can decide to have behavioral methods to not lose it that fast. So small birds, very, very small birds, you will not find in Arctic, or small mammals you will not find in Arctic. You will find big, big mammals, hairy mammals, very fat, like mammals with fat layers in Arctic. So that's exactly was the correct answer. Just because you inhibited and thought not to answer, so I will think that, oh, Arpit did not know the answer. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I think we have to stop encouraging giving right answers only, because the 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 wrong thing about right answers is they are available on internet or in books. But the right thing about wrong answers is they're not available anywhere. So you think a wrong answer. Your neurons do hard work in thinking a wrong answer. I think that's more to me, like I come from a research background. So to me, non-canonical approaches are more interesting, because what's new in this? We know it, right? Is there something we don't know? That's more interesting, right? But yeah, you have to know things for now because you are going to give your school examinations. But keep this attitude of not hesitating or not judging anyone else or yourself who gives a wrong answer. So temperature, and I hope it's clear how it defines and shapes organism. How does
Yes.
water defines and shape organism? Do we see any water related adaptations in organisms? I'm not talking about organisms that live in water and organisms that live in land. Of course, there will be a difference. I'm talking about
Amphibian?
water. But amphibian, again, you are saying that amphibians are dependent on water because they lay eggs in water. Okay. Let me say mammals. So same. Or can I say that water has also shaped different mammals differently? Because saying that water has shaped fish differently and a mammal differently is very obvious. Because fish live in water. Mammals don't live in water. but I'm talking about factors that affect similar organisms, but in different ways. Like, can water affect different mammals differently?
Yes, sir.
Yes, of course. How?
Sir, dolphin is a mammal, but it lives in water.
Forget about anything that lives in water. Take into consideration mammals that live on ground, on soil. Can water so you are saying that water can only affect mammals if one mammal is in water and the other mammal is out? Are there are there not regions on land, some which are rich in water and some which are deficient in water? And are there not mammals living in?
Yeah,
Yeah,
camels probably.
perfect. Camels are mammals, just like cows, buffaloes, horse. What makes camels different from other mammals?
They need to store a lot more energy in water because they live in a very arid condition.
Exactly. So what have they done? How has water shaped their physiology? Being mammals, they have a hump which
Yeah, where they
horse
store all the water
water.
nutrition.
Yes, all the water-rich nutrition or water-dissolved vitamins are water-soluble vitamins are stored in a camel's hump. Okay, that's why camels have that tissue. They develop that specific organ tissue for that reason. Okay, also, it's even deep-rooted. Camels' RBCs are of different shape. You know that? Normal mammals RBC looks something like this, round, like discoid. So if you see it from the side view, broader towards the ends and narrower towards the center, right? From the side. You understood? A disc which is thinner on the center and thicker on the side. This is a normal RBC in human or in goat or let's say in horse. In camel, the RBC looks like this from the side. From the center, it's sorry, from the top also it looks like this. So it basically looks like a rugby ball. You know why? Why a camel's RBC is like a rugby ball? Because RBCs do not have a nucleus and RBCs cannot show high osmotic tolerance. So if a human drinks too much of water in one go, that human will die, because the blood will get so much of water in one go. So much means, like, for a human to die, the human has to drink, let's say, in one go 10 liters water, which we never can, which we never do. So we don't die. But a camel living in an arid region may find water once in a week somewhere. So what do camels do? They can drink in one
They
sitting.
drink a lot basically.
Yeah, they can drink up to 80 liters of water in one go. I can understand that they are big, but 80 liters is too much, right? No other mammal of that size drinks 80 liters or 100 liters of water in one go. Not even elephants, because elephants live in forests. They find water very often, so they drink whatever is required in their body. Then their thirst quenches. Camels do not have this thirst quenching thing. They can just keep drinking because they know that maybe for the next 1 week I'll not find it, so I can drink it, put it in my blood, and from my blood I can absorb it and put it in my hump. So they have a mechanism, a physiology developed because of water scarcity. Okay, makes sense, people? And they have a different shaped RBC because RBCs burst. This biconcave shape RBCs, if you keep them in high like very high osmotic condition, like where the water is too much, they swell up and they burst. They can burst, but a camel cannot allow its RBC to burst. So it has a different shape altogether. So that's how water also shapes organisms and their physiology. Is it clear, everyone? I hope you are noting these things down. Is it clear, everyone? Any questions? Any doubts?
No, sir.
No. Now coming to light. So on the planet, every organism is affected by the light and the dark cycle. And one day on planet Earth is 24 hours, correct? Shy of 24 hours, but we consider it 24 hours. So 24 hours has some, normally, ideally, it should have 12 hours of dark and 12 hours of light that we consider as a daylight cycle. But depending on where we are on the planet, the light and the dark cycle can differ. And but whatever it is, it will be 24-hour cycle. Okay, it can be 14 hours light and 12 hours dark, or something like that. Sorry, 14 hours light and 10 hours dark, or 16 hours light and 8 hours dark, or something like that. But organisms maintain their physiological rhythms, which is called circadian rhythm, which is also known as the biological clock. So no one wakes up the birds in nature in the morning. It's just the light, right? Light acts as a cue, and they don't put alarms like us. They don't have this facility of snoozing it also. So they follow a very hardwired behavior which is driven by light and dark. Almost all organisms which live in hello. Hey everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, sorry, I lost internet. I lost electricity actually for a couple of minutes.
So you should enable that we can chat with others, because like I thought my internet is like stuck and I was like roaming here and there and I was unable to
Oh,
ask anybody.
oh,
Is
we
it
can
like
chat with others. How can I enable it? I
I
cannot
don't know,
even
like
share
it
right
is
now because I'm not
disabled
even
here.
host. I think host can do this, right? Let me write a
Like
message.
previously, when the online classes started, na, we used to interact with others in the class. Now we cannot even interact with our batchmates.
Okay, okay, okay. That I'll escalate. It's a good point. I'll escalate it upper. Currently, though, I cannot share thing. I'm not anyone who's co-host. No one is co-host. Okay. So I have to claim. Okay, I cannot even claim to be a host. That's amazing. Give me one moment, people. Okay. Sorry. Okay, am I audible? Am I audible, people? Okay. Now, am I audible, everyone? People, am I audible?
Yes, yes, now it's audible.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I can also share now. Okay, Arpit, I'll take your point into consideration. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, sorry for that. So yes, so I was saying that organisms are also shaped by light and the availability of light. Not just animals, also plants. So for plants, photo period is one of the most important factors that decide their productivity in nature and what kind of metabolic activity they will show. Okay, so plants, there are some kind of plants they have which have adapted to only thrive in an environment where there is maximum daylight, whereas some kind of plants can only grow in less photoperiod conditions. Okay, so that's light. How does soil, what is soil first of all? What do we mean by what is soil? Where does it come from? Was it always there on the earth?
Yes, it is.
So you mean that earth formed and there was soil? Where did soil came from? That's not possible. No, we say that earth, we don't say that, we have evidences that earth is molten from inside. Volcanoes are a evidence that everyone can see that inside of the earth is molten. Magma, lava is filled inside. So at some point of time, earth, the whole earth was molten and the crust got solidified as it cooled down. So anything that is molten and cools down, like chocolate, there is no powder, right? It is just solid things. So when Earth cooled down, there should be just stones, like fixed stone or mountains, boulders, but not soil. Make sense or not?
So, sir, like the whole earth is covered with rocks, like
Exactly.
before the.
The whole Earth was covered with rocks when everything started. So how did soil came up? Because of weathering of rocks. We have read a phenomena that rock weathers. That is the reason
Yes.
that mountains lose their height over time. So mountains which are the oldest are also the shortest. Himalayas are the highest mountains because they are the newest mountain ranges. Okay, so 10 million years down the line, Himalayas won't be as high as they are today because they will also undergo weathering. So rocks, mountains undergo weathering and form soil. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, great. So soil, how does that affect organisms? Keep noting some points which you find interesting and important, because these points will come back. They will not be asked in your board, so I'm not wasting a lot of time in dictating it, but I do not also like to completely just miss that part, and just for the sake of finishing the syllabus, let's just talk about population. So how does soil affect organisms?
The pH of the soil could like affect how good either
Yes,
the plants or
perfect.
the animals. Yeah.
Perfect. And how is that pH decided? On what kind of solutes, salt and other things are dissolved in the soil. And
Exactly.
for anything to dissolve in the soil, we need the soil to retain water. So basically everything comes down to the one property, which is how good a soil is in water retention capacity. So different soils have different water retention capacities, right? Sand, for that matter, which is in desert, has no water retention capacity. So sand is neither acidic nor basic. It's just neutral sand. It cannot hold any water, so it cannot also hold anything that can dissolve with water and increase or decrease its pH or salinity. Correct? And as Matthew correctly said, that different organisms or different plants specifically, or different kind of bacteria, fungi, lichens, even animals can live in different kind of soil. So earthworms won't tolerate very saline soil. Okay, so that's why they will if there is a farmland, or if there is a field which is heavily treated by fertilizers and insecticides and pesticides, over time you will see that the earthworm starts dying in that land and there will be no earthworm. So over time, when earthworms go, so nothing can make the soil porous, and you have to just depend on plowing it and putting fertilizers only, because earthworms are a very important detritivorous for the soil. And about detritivorous we will study in the next chapter of ecology. So soil is very important. Okay, so all these factors are important for organisms. It shapes and affects how organisms live. And now, coming from organisms to population, so let's talk about the why we were setting this base up is population, which we have already defined. So let's talk about population dynamics and population attributes. Attributes means characters. So write down population attributes first. So the question is, what are the features that we can study for an organism, or which holds true or makes sense for an organism but does not hold true or make sense for a population? Or the question could be vice versa also. What attributes you can only study in a population and cannot study in an organism? Anyone?
Maybe migration. We can study that, right?
So migration you can also study in. So you are saying that mostly populations migrate as, sorry, mostly organisms migrate as population, right? You're
Yeah.
true. You're true. So you're correct. But there are solitary migrators as well. So migration is a organism has to move. Okay, so that's still a physical activity which is done both by populations as a whole and also done by organism. Organism can migrate, but mostly they live in populations. So whatever factors tell one organism to migrate will tell other organism to also migrate. So they will migrate in population. That's a very good point. That's a very, very valid point. But it's not exclusive, because there can be solitary migrators. Okay. For example, if there is very less any population which is less scarce, for example, if you say inside a forest, organisms move from one place to very far away another place in just a group of two or a single organism sometimes. So that's an activity. Migration is a behavioral activity, physical activity. Anything else? Any feature? So let me give you hints. So organisms take birth and they die. So organism has a defined beginning and a defined end. Does a population has a defined beginning and a defined end? So I say that human X was born in 1960 and died in 2020. But can I say human population was born in this and died in this year? No, right?
No.
Yes. So organisms have birth and death, defined, well defined, fixed lifespan. But populations have birth rate and death rates. Okay. So write down. Individuals or organisms have births and death, but populations have birth rate and death rate. This is a very important concept, because we can say that this population is declining because the death rate is more than the birth rate, or this population is expanding because birth rate is more than the death rate, or this population is stable, so expanding, declining, or stable population. There we do not worry about organisms which are taking birth or organisms which are dying, until and unless, so till there is a population to study, we are mostly, and most of these studies which include how a disease propagates. So for example, whenever we make a medicine, for now, when we made vaccines for COVID, did we take into account each and every individual of human population? No, right? We took into account because we did not have that much time, and there are 8 billion humans on the planet, so it's not possible also. So we just pinned down a basic science of how viruses, how epidemiology, it is not even important to vaccinate each and everyone in a population, which is not possible also, to get rid of a pandemic. According to science, pandemic is a population phenomena. Disease, whereas, is a personal phenomenon. Everyone who was infected by COVID was not did not show severity of symptoms to the same extent. Correct? Some people were very, very severe. Many died. Some people were mildly, they showed symptoms. And I'm not talking about those who were affected by different strains, even by the same strain. Okay, the severity was different. Some people were asymptomatic. Yes, with strain to strain difference, the strains which were, how do we say that this strain of COVID is more lethal? Because we looked at the population. So out of 100, how many died when they were infected by this strain? But for that person who died, so for 5 people who died with 5 different strains, for them, at an organismal level, all the strains are lethal, right? Yes or no?
Yes,
Do you
sir.
understand? So for anyone, suppose one person died with Delta. So Delta variant is 100% lethal for that person. Another person died with Omicron. So for that person, Omicron is 100% lethal. But that does not give us a true representation of how much should we panic about that virus, and what measure should we take as a society, because we live in a population. So we will start looking per 100 infections, what is the death rate, or per 1,000 infection, what is the death rate? And we realize that it's higher for Delta, lower for Omicron, but transmission is higher for Omicron, lower for Delta. So that's how we change our plans. we also calculate that how much proportion of population, if vaccinated successfully, will lead to this pandemic wane off. Because herd immunity will come after one point of time. So all these things can only be done on populations, okay, because it's not possible to study on a organismal level. So let's define what is birth rate, death rate. Write down, it is the per capita birth. Capita means 100. So it is the per capita birth or per capita birth or death that happens in a given fixed population size. When I say per capita, it means that it is fixed. So, but per capita birth or death happening in a population size. Is that clear, everyone?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is about birth rate. And how will we count birth rate and death rate? Because it's rate of change. What do we mean by rate, people?
The amount of which it
Per unit time.
changes.
So, sorry. Yes. Matthew
Per
says the
unit.
amount of.
Like how much it changes per like unit time.
Yes, perfect. And I think Arpit was also saying the same thing per unit time,
Yes.
right? So anything that changes with respect to time defines the rate of its change, so rate of inflation, rate of growth, rate of weight gain, that's all per unit time. So per capita birth or death in a population. So let's say you tell me. So I'm studying a population of tigers, let's say. So there were 50 tigers in a forest in 2021. Then I studied at the end of 2022, and there are now 60 tigers. So within that year, tigers must have born, tigers must have died, but this is the total population. So we know that we have to find the population growth rate. So how much did the population grow? So how will you figure that out? What is the rate here? What is the rate? Rate of change, per capita change, rate of change.
10.
10 is not the rate, 10 is the number. So that's the mistake that we all do. I gave you a very small number, you can say 10. What if I say there were 50 million bacteria on my plate? Next day I came and there were 200 million bacteria. So if I say what is the rate of change, you will say 150 million. No, right?
No.
Yeah. So the same logic you have to apply here. Don't go for smaller numbers and think that it's 10. So how do we do it is, anyone would like to give a try quick? Because if it comes from you, once when I will tell, you all are so smart that you will understand it quickly and say, oh, okay, that was simple. But before I push you, you won't try. That's a problem.
Is it 110?
It is the change in number in unit time upon initial population, because the change happened in that, right?
Yeah.
So from 50 to 60, what was the change in number?
10.
10. What was the initial population to begin with?
50.
50.
What is the answer?
1 by
1
5.
by 5.
1 by 5 is equal to, right?
0.
So this is the rate of change of the population. Okay.
Okay.
Which means that per individual, per 5, the growth was per 5 individual in this population, there was 1 individual that was added in that year. Okay.
Okay.
So if you have to say that per 2 individuals 1 was added, the rate has to be half or 0.5. If you say that per 1 individual there was 2 people added now, so population doubled, so the rate will be 2. And it simply tells you if the rate of growth is 2, population will double. If the rate of growth of 3, population will triple. If the rate of growth is, you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. So this is how we define birth rate or death rate. Simple. Any other attribute? So this is the first attribute. 2 actually. NCERT says 1 and 2. We'll just consider it as 1. For writing, you can write the first attribute is birth rate, second attribute is death rate, and this is how we get marks in boards. I'm just telling you, see, be neat and clean in boards. I will always tell you, be very organized, present it well. I know that presentation has nothing to do with science at all. A person can write the most logical and scientific answer in a very bad handwriting or just in one sentence without, you know, doing any sentence formation. The science is no different, but the marks that both these people will get can differ. So just present yourself well in the boards, practice writing answers. That's why how to number the questions that you are writing answers for. For example, don't just number the answer. You can write question 2A and then you write the answer of 2A. Make it clear in your answer also. You don't have to write the question, but you have to write the answer, but make it clear. So these things, and whenever you finish a paragraph or a question, leave one line. One place where you should not worry about saving paper is your board examinations. Let me tell you, it's brutal, but it's true. Okay. Any other attribute that you think can only be applied to population but cannot be applied to organisms? People, come on.
How much it's developing? Oh,
You
okay,
mean
wait.
growth, correct?
Yeah, growth. Yeah.
Very good. So population growth, that's correct. That's completely correct. But before that, I have to tell you that what I was saying, I forgot the term. Yes, before that, I have to tell you that there is something called for individuals. We can one individual is just one, but a population, it's not possible to count. For example, if I say how will you decide the size of a population? So before population growth, because you can say something is growing when you know the initial size. 50 tigers were easy to count, so you did not think about this. So you can very easily calculate birth rate, death rate. What about bacteria? 50 million to I started with. Can you count 50 million and then see the change that now it is 60 million? So let me calculate the birth rate, death rate, and all that thing. No,
No.
you cannot even study population growth if you don't know what you started with. So another factor which is studied in population is
Age?
density. Yes, age is there. Yes, age will come to age, but okay, let's first come to, because you started. So so for age, even before age, let me start with something called sex ratio. It all goes in hand in hand. So an individual organism has sex, male or female, but a population has a sex ratio. You cannot have one sex, right? So what is sex ratio? It's simply,
How much, like the ratio of males to females?
yes, either an individual is male or female, but how many individuals are male and female in a population? So we can say that 60% of a population are females and 40% are males. So it is the ratio of males, number of males upon number of females, right? Correct? Sometimes like
Yes.
it's like it can also be opposite, like number of females. Like for humans, when we find that which countries or states have different sex ratios, number of females per 1000 males also we take. Okay. By this way, you find the sex ratio of a given population. So sex ratio is another um, attribute of just population. Third, which Matthew said, is what do you say, Matthew? Age. Okay. So age category. Okay. Or age distribution is a good word. So population, an organism have one age, one fixed age. I am X years old, someone is Y years old, but a population, you cannot say that this deer population is 10 years old. No. Okay. So there's a age distribution, just like sex distribution, but sex is either male or female, so you can make it out as a ratio. Here for age distribution, you need to categorize like from in different categories from 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15. Just give me one moment. Did we score? Who scored? Who got penalty?
I think
Argentina got penalty, people. Okay.
Yeah, for an Usman Dembele foul.
Yeah, great. I think we can just stop for 30 seconds to watch this penalty, right? Because my
Yeah,
flatmate
please.
really did
Yeah,
this
yeah,
hard
yeah,
work to
yeah, yeah,
bring his
yeah, yeah.
laptop to my room. Yeah.
Let's see. I think Messi is gonna
Are you
score.
okay with that, Arpit? Arpit, Argentina got a penalty, man.
I'm
I
very
was
sure
not.
Messi is gonna score. Trust me.
Yeah, Messi is there.
He's there. He's gonna score.
Arpit, if you don't mind, can I just take this 30 seconds to
Yes,
see this
sir. No
penalty?
issues. No issues.
All right. Great. Messi
It's
is
live on
taking the penalty.
YouTube, so
It's
yeah,
also on. Yeah, it's free actually. World Cup is free for.
yeah, it's free. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So you don't have to pay to see the World Cup. Come on.
Okay, he's
Man.
gonna
Let's see
take
on
it.
World Cup. Yeah, Messi is taking it.
Loris got. He scored. He scored.
Yes. Yep.
There you go.
That's right.
Scored.
Great.
Bottom left
He
corner.
scored.
He scored. He scored. He scored.
That's what you
1-0.
do. Thanks. Thank you so much, Manan. Thank you. Thank you. So Manan is a very amazing flatmate of mine. Okay, back to some science. Arpit, is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Great. Okay, so actually me and Matthew are very big kind of football freaks, you can say. Anyways, so coming back to age distribution. So for a population, whenever we talk about why is age distribution important, because that gives us a handle to study multifactorial things. For example, disease. Many diseases are age associated, right? And if I see a kind of a disease outburst which is related to age, so that old people mostly tend to get this kind of disease or infection, middle-aged people used to get this kind of a lifestyle disease. So if in a population I see that there are more old people or old people population is growing, we can also make policies and health related, public health related things or public health related what do you say, policies accordingly. So age distribution gives us a lot of information, okay, about not just disease was one example. It also gives us an example, it also gives us an handle to predict what is going to happen to a population. So you write down age distribution simply means in a given population what is the fraction of individuals of various age groups. And how is it useful? One is disease, to make disease models. Other is to predict about the population itself. So if in a population you see that more than half of the population is out of the reproductive age, okay, so more than half of the females are older than, let's say, 50 years. So you can predict that the population in the near future is not going to expand so much. Maybe it can stay stable or it will start declining if the trend continues. Yes or no? Make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So for that, how we cannot just represent it by a ratio. So to represent this, we make age pyramids. So what is the concept of age pyramids? Because just by looking at these pyramids, you can tell that, oh, this is a declining population, this is a expanding population. So basically we divide, and let me use different colored, the population into 3 categories. Post reproductive, because this is what matters for the population, okay, not the nitpicky details like 15 to 20, 20 to 25 years. Something is post reproductive, then we want to know about the reproductive, and then we want to know about the pre-reproductive, okay, which means juveniles. And if I see, I'll use the similar color of bars. If I see that, so this is, let's say this bar represents the post reproductive population, okay. Okay, and then let's take a blue bar and insert a reproductive population, which is this one, okay. Is it clear?
Yes.
And let me take a green one and insert another population, which is this one. Cool. Can you see all these 3 bars?
Yes.
So just looking at this, if I just say that what's going to happen according to you to this population in future, what will you say? Just look at these. Now the numbers are not important. The bar represent the individual. So it is clear that this more reproductive aged people are there in a population as compared to post reproductive, and even more pre-reproductive aged people are there in the population. So what does it tell you about the population? Can you predict something on this basis, people? Can you tell me the population is going to expand, it's going to stay stable, or it's going to decline?
I think it's gonna expand because the pre-reproductive stage is more than the post-reproductive stage.
Yes, so I'll give you a shorthand to, if any kind of pyramid comes in your exam, you just have to see what's going to happen. So post reproductive stage people are going to death, so they will vanish, right? Or they will stay post reproductive, and reproductive people will go into post reproductive stage, and pre-reproductive will go into reproductive. So if this number was 100 and this was 150, let's say, and this was 80, so after some time, so there were 100 people producing. In the next generation, there'll be 150 producing. So when they will produce more than what 100 produced, right? Yes or no?
Yes.
Taking out of consideration very complex human society, let's say this is just any population. So if in the next generation or in the next cycle, pre-reproductive population is going to be more than the reproductive population that is currently existing, the population will always expand. So in a manner, this post-reproductive population does not directly have any deciding vote in the population. You can just look at reproductive and pre-reproductive and tell that whether a population is going to expand or not, or stay stable. And why I'm saying this is because, you know, even this graph, so I'll make another graph and you have to tell me whether it's reproductive or, sorry, whether it's going to, so let's write here first, it's an expanding population. Okay, and just final last thing, if I make a graph like this, so this is the post reproductive, this is the reproductive, and this is a pre-reproductive. So what will happen to this population, people? Expanding, staying stable, or declining? Arpit, Matthew, quickly, this is the last thing for
This is stable.
No, it will also expand. It is also expanding population. Okay. You know why? Because you're thinking that this looks more stable. So don't get confused. As I told you, this post-reproductive will go and vanish. All you have to worry about this transition. So let's say this was 100. This will always be more than it, right? 150. And if it was 120 or even it was 150, does not matter, no. A post-reproductive organism is never going to become reproductive again. So the only fate it has is death, or to live for some time and then die. Only the conversion, transition between reproduction and pre-reproductive matters. So till the time the pre-reproductive is more and is going to replace the reproductive to be more than what it is currently, it is an expanding population. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
There can be confusing graphs coming and you might choose the wrong answer, even when you understand the concept and it is very simple a concept. So go back and look at how does a declining and stable population pyramid will look like, and make